Time to wake up.
Wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, you wake up, you wake.
Time to wake up. Time to wake up.
Wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, you wake up, you wake up, you wake.
Time to wake up. Time to wake up.
Good evening, people. Good evening. And welcome to the Wake Up Show. I am Brother Azake Fingers. Hello, everybody. How you doing? This is a special edition of the Wake Up Show. Try to do this lesson on the Sabbath, which was Saturday at 8 a.m. And for some odd reason, I got cut off. I was going to do this lesson again, this up and coming Sabbath, but I'm like, no, because people need to see and get this information before Easter comes. That's what needs to happen. So I thank everybody on Facebook for tuning in. I know some are probably watching regular TV or something else. I might even change. I've been thinking about it, changing my my slot from Saturday morning to now, 7 p.m. on Monday nights. It's what the Lord want me to do, so that's the way I look at it. Please share the video. Please share video, especially with people who still believe in Easter and that still believe that Christ actually rose on Sunday morning. All right? Because a lot of people need to see. You could tell people all day when Christ rose, all right? But a lot of people need to see visually what you're talking about. And that's what we're going to try to do today with this lesson. For you to watch visually when he died, when he rose from the grave. Just to make sure I'm cool, let me make sure I'm cool real quick. Please share the video. Okay, yeah, I'm all right. I'm just making sure because sometimes this thing be trying to freeze up on me. And I don't know if it does until it totally shuts off. So, first thing I want to do is give all praise to the Most High, God of Shem, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, in his beloved son's name, which I call Jesus. You can call him whatever name you feel fit, but I call him Jesus, and I have no problem with it, and I hope you don't either. What else? That's about it. So let's go ahead and open up with what I always like to read for newcomers, especially for newcomers. All right. And hopefully you share this video with newcomers that's seeking the truth, and they can wake up and see what type of life they have been in. So Isaiah 28, we're going to start reading at verse 9. Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. Who is the he that's teaching this knowledge? This is the Lord himself. Who is he teaching it to? He's teaching it to his priests, his kingdom of priests. That is the nation of Israel. Verse 10, for precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line. Here a little and there a little. The way he's teaching and the way we should teach is precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. You can read straight through this book if you want to, like a novel, but you will see other messages when you do precept upon precept. There's a lot of things. There's so many things that no one can really understand every single detailed thing in their lifetime. That's how much God is so powerful and how much knowledge he has. And understand, we only know in part. So when Christ comes back, he's going to finish teaching. All right. And even in his kingdom, he's still going to be teaching. All right. Verse 11. We're in Isaiah 28, verse 11. For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people. Notice he's saying, for with stammering lips and another tongue. He's not speaking about Hebrew. He's speaking about all other nations. Why? Because we were meant to go around the world to teach in other languages. But because we messed up as a people, we got sent around the world as slaves. And we still got to teach in other languages, not just Hebrew. I have nothing wrong. I have no problem with Hebrew. If people want to say what is Hebrew, what isn't Hebrew, I don't care. But I teach in the English, and I know that my God is not a vain God to put me or anybody else in the fire because we did not learn Hebrew. And he caused men to change and translate, this word into English for us. All right. So he's teaching knowledge, precept on precept, through other languages. Let's go to Isaiah 8 and verse 20. That's what he's doing. Now, what are we supposed to do? Isaiah 8 verse 20. To the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, is because there is no light in them. So if these people are not teaching, we're talking about the kingdom of priests now, because we already read where the Lord was teaching the priests. Now, what are the priests supposed to do? Teach from the law and the testimony. And if they're not, there's no light in them. There's none. If they're only teaching from the scriptures only, which is Genesis to Malachi, and not the testimony, there's no light in them. If they're just teaching from the testimony and not the scriptures, there's no light in them either. If they're just teaching from Matthew to Revelation, and that's it, and maybe dabble in Psalms and Proverbs to feel good, there's still no light in them because they're not teaching the full book, the volume of the book, which is from Genesis to Revelation. Let's see who actually listened to these people who were teaching the way God told us to teach. Let's go to Revelation 14, and then one more scripture after that, and we'll get started. Revelation 14 and verse 12. Here are the patience of the saints. Now, people are always talking about saints. Well, let's see who the saints are. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So the saints who kept the law of God and the faith of Jesus, they kept everything from Genesis to Revelation. So if you're calling yourself a saint, and you say you follow Jesus, Jesus is the one that said keep the commandments. Let's go to Revelation 22, the end of the book, the last chapter, and read Revelations 22 and 14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates unto the city. These are the people that kept the commandments of God, and they're being blessed that they may have the right to the tree of life. Who's the tree of life? That's Christ. He's still going to be doing more teaching. Let's read verse 15. For without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. That's the total opposite of the commandments. The total opposite. And 1 John 3 and 4 tells you, sin is a transgression of the law. That's in the New Testament. It's literally telling you what sin is, going against the law. All right, so now that we got that together, let's get into this multiplication problem that we have, this addition problem that the world is actually having that's wrong. Let's go to Matthew 12. Matthew 12. And I want to explain something first. All right, this is what I'm explaining. As you see at the top of the screen, we got the days of the week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we have the names of the days of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. At the top, I don't have my trusty arm. I need you to go get my bag for me. I need my trusty arm. At the top boxes that you see, that's going to be represented. It's going to represent, the morning. All right. And then the bottom boxes that you see, it's going to represent the evening. All right. And we're going to read now. Thank you, O daughter of mine. And where art thou, O trusty arm of mine? Oh, wait, that feels like it right there. But it's in another pocket. All right, so I got my trusty arm now. All right, cool. Here's my trusty arm. All right, I know it looks creepy, but it's my trusty arm. All right. So what people do, well, first of all, let's read what Christ said about him being in the grave. And then we're going to count from here. All right. Matthew 12, verse 38. Matthew 12, verse 38. Then certain of the scribes and of the Pharisees answered, saying, Master, we would see a sign from thee. But he answered, this is Jesus speaking now. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. The Lord put all of us on blast. He called every single one of us an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. And there shall no sign be given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. Now this is Christ. This is Jesus talking. He's telling us, I'm going to give you a sign of me. Verse 40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now, let's get an understanding about this verse. He's saying, so shall the Son of Man, which he's speaking of himself, be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. He will be 3 days and 3 nights in the grave only. There are too many people that's trying to count the day that he died. They're trying to count the daytime when he died as one day. And that's not right. So according to this chart, if we're going to use 3 days and 3 nights like Christ said, not your pastor, Christ, we got 1 day, 1 night, 1 day, 2 nights, 2 days. 3 nights, 3 days. That means he had to rise somewhere on Monday. But that's not right according to Easter, right? Now, for those that live in Canada, and I think some other countries, they are now celebrating Easter on Monday because they realized the mistake. So they switched from Sunday to Monday. Neither one makes sense, right? Here's another way. Here's the way the world, the entire world really looks at it. They look at it as he died on Friday. Second day was Saturday. Third day was Sunday. But if it's 3 days and 3 nights, that means he didn't rise Sunday morning. Something's wrong. Because there got to be 3 days and then 3 nights. So something's not adding up. 3 days plus 3 nights equals Easter. Are we sure about this? Well, the only way to really find out is if we start from the very beginning. So like I said, let's go to Genesis 1. I like doing this lesson like this because people need to actually see. They have to see the vision in order to get it. Because sometimes, like I said before, trying to explain it, people don't get it. Because they're stuck on Roman time and Roman calendars. The calendar we have today is a Roman Greco calendar. The time of the day starts at midnight was started by the Romans. We're going to look at what God's calendar is about. That's what we're going to do. I see that thing's just glowing over there. Okay, well, it's just going to have to glow. So let's start at the very top. Let's find out how time starts and when it ends as far as days, all right? Genesis 1, let's start reading at verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. When was the beginning? Now, yeah, we got scientists that like to sit up and say, the earth is such and such million years old, but they can't tell you when the beginning was. No one can tell you when the beginning was. So, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Let's skip down to verse 5. And God called the light day. Let's start at verse 3. Let's start at verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Let's all understand something. Everything started in darkness. It didn't start in twilight. It started in darkness. For those that understand the Sabbath, it starts when it's dark, just as dark in the west as it is in the east. Because everything started in darkness. Same thing with the cycle of the moon. The new moon is the darkness, and it gradually gets light. God ain't changed his pattern. All right? Verse 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So the evening, the darkness, not the twilight part, the darkness is when everything starts. Every day starts. Now we're going to read it a couple more times because God is drilling this into our head, right? Let's skip down to verse 8. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. There it is again. Let's skip down to verse 13. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Let's skip down to verse 19. You can read the whole chapter on your own, but I'm pointing out that every time God got done with doing something that day, he's letting us know. Verse 19. And the evening, the darkness, and the morning, the light, were the fourth day. Skip down to verse 23. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Verse 31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Let's go straight on into Genesis 2. And thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So, what you see at the top of the screen are 7 days. God never named them. In Genesis, he tells us this was the first day, the second day, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and now we're reading about the seventh day. But when did he say the days start? At evening, right? Now, right here, these are the days that we look at according to the Roman calendar, named after other gods. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are all names of other gods over the days of the week. Now, when do the days start? Right here. So what you see in this corner, in this box, is the morning. The reason I have the morning up top, because that's the way we're used to seeing a whole day, okay? And the evening is at the bottom, because that's the way I should put this up top, but then people will still get confused. So this is a whole day, but it starts at evening. All right, and we're going to cross all the way through. We're going to do this so you can get yourself an understanding. And I do ask for people that are watching, please share the video. All right. Now, so we got the evening and the morning. And then he said the seventh day was the Sabbath day. So right here, the seventh day, he separated it. That's what sanctification means. It means to sanctify. Verse 3, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. All right? Because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So we got 7 days a week. Names of the days right there. And we can see on the seventh day, which is Saturday, that's the Sabbath. But we know, those that have understanding know that the Sabbath really starts Friday night. Okay? Look at what I'm doing. Okay, let's cut that down. So, even though this is the day as we're looking at it, this is when the day actually starts for the Sabbath, Friday evening. All right? So, let's keep going. Let me see what I got next. All right. So, in that Sabbath, we're to do certain things. Now we're going to get this through some people. Let's learn a little bit on the way of learning some stuff, all right? So let's go to Exodus 20, because we're going to read from the law and the testimony, right? That's what the Lord said. Teach from the law and the testimony. Exodus 20. Now this is the commandment he gave the nation of Israel to keep the Sabbath. And anybody else who decides they want to become a part of the nation of Israel. And I can't think of the word right now because that thing just threw me off. For salvation. So let's go to Exodus 20 and start reading at verse 8 about the Sabbath. Exodus 20 verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. I like to read from Deuteronomy 5 and 12, where it says, keep the Sabbath day holy. Because some people like to read this, say, I remember it. But we still have worship service on Sunday. Verse 9, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maidservant, nor thy manservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So the Lord is telling us, nobody should be working. Now it is good to do good on the Sabbath if somebody is in help, needs some help or something. Jesus explains all that in the testimony. But right here we see if you are an employer and you're open on the Sabbath day and you got people working for you, you're in violation. And you can't be slick about it either. Well, I'm not going to work, but I'm going to make others work. You can't do it because the Lord said right here not to have your maid servants or your manservants work for you. Anybody that's working for you, you in violation. You putting them in jeopardy. Verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. We read that in Genesis 2 about the Sabbath day. Oh, now you want to freeze up on me, man? All right, let's go. Let's see if it'll go back. All right, so here we go with the Sabbath day. All right, that's what we're reading about. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Now, we're not supposed to do any work on that day because the Lord sanctified that day. He rested, and he wants us to rest. But he does want us to do one thing, at least one thing on the Sabbath day. Leviticus 23 and verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. So that is church, holy gathering. Some people like to say, well, we're supposed to rest on the Sabbath day and then have the gathering on Sunday. That's a lie too. And let me just make this clear. You can worship all 7 days of the week. You can teach all 7 days of the week. But you better keep that Sabbath day. And your doctrine better be telling people to keep the commandments of God. Because if you're trying to ride the fence and so-called keep the Sabbath day, but keep your Sunday worship, but you're telling people the law's no more and we don't have to keep the law, you still in violation. That's how you try to spirits people. What are they teaching? When I talk about Sunday, folks, I don't talk about them going to church. I talk about the doctrine. What's the Sunday Christian doctrine telling you to do? Not keep the law of God. All right. But I know Hebrews who have services on Saturday and Sunday. And their doctrine says keep the law of God and especially keep the Sabbath day. So we're not supposed to do, let's keep reading this. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath day of rest and a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord, not the Sabbath of the Jews, not the Sabbath of the Israelites. It's the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Everywhere you go on this planet, when that sun goes down, which we call Friday night, no matter where you are, that's when the Sabbath starts. So you can't get away. Well, we can't do it because we ain't in Jerusalem. Lord ain't going to try to hear that. He's not going to try to hear that. Let's go to Luke 4 and see who kept the Sabbath. The very person that gave us the law and said keep the Sabbath kept it himself. So if people are saying they are followers of Christ, why are you not doing what Christ not only said to do, but then what he did? Luke 4 verse 14. And Jesus returned into the power of the Spirit unto Galilee, and there went out a fame of him throughout all the region round about. And he taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, this is how Jesus grew up. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. What did he read? Verse 17, and there was delivered to him the book of the prophet Isaiah. Oh, something out of the Old Testament, huh? And when he had opened the book, he found a place where it was written. Now, we're not going to keep going. But the Lord kept the Sabbath day itself. This is something Christ did. Yet people like to still say, we don't have to keep the law. We don't have to keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath has even been taken out of the whore's doctrine. Yeah, we can keep everything else, but that Sabbath day, we ain't keeping it. Nah, if Jesus kept the Sabbath, I'm going to keep the Sabbath. Let's see who else kept the Sabbath as well. Let's go to Acts 17. Let's go to Acts 17. So for those that are coming in, thank you for coming in. Shalom, Brother Eric. I see. I'm only doing this on Facebook because they cut me off on the Sabbath day. So I'm like, I got to redo this one, especially for those that's getting ready to celebrate Easter this coming Sunday. They need to see this lesson and visually see what's going on, and maybe they will repent. So let's go to Acts 17 and read who followed Christ. Let's recap. Christ is the one who made the worlds. Christ is the one who separated the Sabbath day and made it holy. Christ is the one who came in the flesh and kept the Sabbath. Look who followed Christ. Acts 17 verse 2. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures. There was no New Testament. And Paul, brother Paul, as his manner was, kept the Sabbath day. And he taught out the scriptures, Genesis through Malachi. Matter of fact, who was he teaching about? Verse 3. Opening and alleging that Christ must needs have suffered and risen again from the dead, and that this Jesus whom I preached unto you is Christ. Paul didn't have the Gospels. He ain't had none of the Gospels. He knew the scriptures, Genesis to Malachi, and he preached Jesus just out of the Old Testament. So how's the whole Old Testament thrown away? That's a tactic of Satan right there. Matter of fact, let's back it up, because some people are probably like, no, Paul, no. Let's go to Acts 24. Let's read something that Paul said himself when he was being put on trial. One verse. Acts 24 verse 14. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers. Remember, Paul was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, right? Believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. So there's no way Paul has said you don't have to keep the law no more, because you know why? He said here he believes everything that was written in the law and the prophets, and that's why he kept the Sabbath day as well. So that was a little learning something on the way of learning something. So out of these 7 days, right here, we got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way to Saturday. We know the Sabbath day is on the 7th day, which people call Saturday, but we know it starts in the evening. All right? This is the morning boxes. This is the evening boxes. Let's keep going now. Let's look at something else. Let's go to Matthew 26. Matthew 26. Matthew 26, we're going to start reading at verse 18. Matthew 26 and verse 18. I did this before. Let's start at 17. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came unto Jesus, saying unto him, Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? And he said, Go into the city. Who said this? This is Christ talking. Go into the city to such a man and say unto him, The master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. Why would Christ keep the Passover if he's coming to destroy the law? The Passover's in the law. Let's keep reading. And the disciples did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. And when the even was come, he sat down with the 12. So the evening came, and now he sat down with the 12. Let's keep your marker here. We're going to come back. Let's go see in the law, because this is the testimony, right? Let's go back in the law, Leviticus 23, and read why Christ waited until the evening to start the Passover. Let's go back to Leviticus 23 and read it out of the law. Leviticus 23, we're going to start at verse 4. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations. Again, see how it says these are the feasts of the Lord, not the feast of the Jews or the feast of the Israelites. These are the feasts of the Lord. So if you follow the Lord, you need to be keeping his feast. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, holy gatherings, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month, at even is the Lord's Passover. Christ is the one that told Moses to write this. Christ came and kept the law at even, in the evening time, because that's when the days start, when it's dark outside. Let's go back to Matthew 26. Now we know why Christ sat down with the 12 when even was come. Let's go back to Matthew 26 and start reading at verse 26. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to his disciples and said, take, eat, this is of my body. So he's breaking bread, right? Let's keep going. And he took the cup and gave them thanks and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remissions of sins. This was only done on the Passover, because in the law, it said do this in its season, right? It didn't say do this once a month. This is not communion. Christ didn't start communion. He was keeping the Passover, something he said to do in the law. Let us keep reading. Let's keep reading, 29. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it with you in my Father's kingdom. Let's skip down to verse 36. Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto his disciples, sit ye here while I go and pray yonder. Now this is all happening on one night. This is happening in the year that Jesus was crucified, is the week that you're going to see in front of you. Because Passover floats every year on a new date because of Roman calendars. All right. So what you're looking at in front of you is going to be the week that Jesus actually died. And verse 37, and he took with him Peter and two sons Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then saith unto them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here and watch with me. Christ himself was exceedingly sorrowful. So for you brothers that like to be like, man, y'all brothers, man, we shouldn't be crying, showing our emotions, all that. Well, you tell that to Christ. Because he knew his time was coming and that flesh was starting to get to him. Verse 39, and he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. He didn't want to die. But he was like, Lord, he's talking to his Father. I don't want to die, but I'm here to do your will. You still need me to do this. I'm going to do it. Verse 40, and he cometh unto the disciples and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, what? Could have not watched with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He's talking about the great tribulation era. The flesh, and that's for all of us. Because I don't care how strong we say we are in the Lord, when that great tribulation comes, that's going to prove how strong we truly are in the Lord. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you I'm going to make it through. I have no idea. I just pray I have the strength of Christ to make it through. Verse 42, he went away again the second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. See, Jesus went back a second time. This is how bad he was feeling about this. And he wasn't done. Verse 43, and he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. They couldn't hang. It's late, and we just ate. Oh, we had Israelitis, man. But Christ was like, I know I'm about to die. The food ain't bugging me. That's why he up here begging his Father. Do I really have to do this? Verse 44. And he left them and went away again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Christ 3 times went and prayed to the Lord, to his Father, to our Father. Do I really have to do this? Is there another way? There's got to be another way, but there wasn't no other way. That's why he had to keep doing it. Verse 45. Then cometh he to his disciples and saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. All of this happened on the Passover. Now remember, if you look at the screen now, because I know you probably studying your book, we're talking about the Passover, the year and the week that Christ was crucified. All right? But what we just read happened right here. He ate the Passover. He prayed because he didn't want to die. And then he was captured. He was totally captured all on the same evening. Right here. Okay? Skip down to verse 63. But Jesus held his peace, 62. But the high priest arose and said unto him, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? Now they brought him up for trial now. All right? But this ain't Pilate yet. This is his own brothers. But Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said, nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He hath spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of a witness? Behold, now we have heard his blasphemy. What think ye? They answered and said, He is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face, and buffeted him, and smote him with the palms of their hands. All of this is written in the Old Testament. Everything that was going to happen to Christ is all written in Genesis to Malachi. And that's what Paul was teaching those people on the on the Sabbath day. He was teaching them these things. He was showing them. Let's go into Matthew 27. All right, Matthew 27, because now what we just read was everything that started right here. This is the Passover night. All right, the evening. But we read that he ate the Passover. He prayed he didn't want to die, and then he was captured. Let's read what happens here now, because this is the same day, the same Passover. Verse 11, Matthew 27 and verse 11. And Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Art thou king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, Thou sayest. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witnessed against thee? And he answered him to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Now at that feast, this is still right here. Now at that feast, the governor want to release a prisoner whom they would. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The chief priests and the elders, they knew who Jesus was. But it was written that his own people going to turn against him. And now they're telling the multitude to turn against Christ. And this goes on today in churches and camps still. Verse 21. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the two will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate saith unto them, What shall I do with this Jesus which is called Christ? They all said unto him, Let him be crucified. This is Christ's own people. This is the nation of Israel. These aren't the Gentiles. This ain't the anybody else. This is us, people. We rejected Christ in the beginning and said we want a king. And then he come in the flesh and we said, no, we want a murderer now. Let's keep reading. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out more, saying, Let him be crucified. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. Pilate knew something was wrong, and he was just in his judgment. And he said, he tried to plead for Christ. But Israel, being stubborn and stiff-necked, no, kill him. Because our leaders told us to say kill him. Verse 25. Then answered all the people and said, His blood be upon us and on our children. That's why we still having problems today. 26. Then released Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. So, again, all this is taking place right here. He's being tried, and now he's about to be crucified. Let's go down to verse 50. Verse 50. Now here's when Jesus was killed. Jesus, when he cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. So now Jesus is killed right here on this day. Let's go to St. John 18. Let's go to St. John 18. Let me make sure I didn't overread. I think I was supposed to read this and come back. But, things happen. St. John 18. And I'm going to read from verse 38. St. John 18, verse 38. Pilate saith unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews and saith unto them, I find him no fault at all. But ye have accustomed that I should release you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Now this is Pilate. He called him the King of the Jews. But what did we do? Then cried all they again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. But we saw where he was killed. I was supposed to read that first, but we saw where he was killed in verse 50 in Matthew, right? Let's go to 1 Corinthians. Let's read out of the New Testament still. Let's go to 1 Corinthians and read one verse. 5. 1 Corinthians 5, and we're going to read one verse. Verse 7. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. So Christ died on the Passover. For those that don't know, he died on the Passover. The reason the Passover and all of that was instituted, because it was a sign pointing to Christ coming to die on the Passover to take away the sins like the goats had to do on Passover. And Passover this particular year was on this day. So remember, this night is when you had to start Passover at evening when it's dark outside. So he started it then. He ate, he prayed, he was captured. Then he was sent to what we would call the next day, but it's the same day. It's just the daytime now. It's the morning. Now he's with Pilate, and he's being tried again in front of the crowd, which is all Israel. Then he's crucified. How do we know he was crucified right here in this week? Let's go to Daniel 9, and we're going to read one verse. Daniel 9 and verse 27. And he, this is talking about Christ, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. 1 week prophetically is 7,000 years. But weekly, it's the same thing. Let's see when Christ actually died. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. When is the midst of the week? Come on, people. Let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 4 is in the middle of the week, isn't it? Because there's 3 more here and there's 3 more here. So that means he literally died on Wednesday morning or afternoon, really. Because it was like 3 p.m. when he died. This is basic stuff. But again, some people have to visually see it on a chart to totally get the understanding. This is when Christ actually died. In the midst of the week on the Passover that year. Okay? Now that we know that, let's go to Luke 23. Because now that we know that Christ died on Wednesday, we need to find out why people think he died on a Friday. Let's go to Luke 23. And we're going to read some things and find out why do people think he died on a Friday. See, and the reason being is because if people are telling you to throw away the Old Testament and throw away the law, these things you will not find out. You will not figure this out. You will go with what the story is being told to the world. You will continue to be like he died on Friday, rose Sunday morning. As long as they keep telling you, stay out of the Old Testament. But let's go to Luke. Luke 23. We're going to start reading at verse 44. All right. This is still about his death on this day. All right. 44. It was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the earth until the 9th hour. So from noon to 3 p.m. is still the daytime of the Passover. On a Wednesday, on the 4th day, in the midst of the week. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple rent in the midst. That's why the sacrifice and oblation ceased, because the veil of the temple was ripped. If you go back and read I think it's Leviticus 4, you will read what they had to do with the veil of the temple. That's where you sprinkle the blood. But when Christ shed his blood, there's no more use of the veil of the temple. Let's keep reading. Verse 46. And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. So we got more witnesses now that he died in the midst of the week on a Wednesday in the morning and afternoon. The daytime, I'm sorry. All right, let's skip down to verse 50. Skip down to verse 50. Now, this is what went on after he died. And behold, there was a man named Joseph, a counselor, and he was a good man and just. Let's skip down to verse 52. This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. And he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in the sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never a man before laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. Let's go to St. John 19. St. John 19. Remember, this is still right here in this day right here. Okay? This is when the man said, let me get the body of Christ and put him down and lay him in the I was about to say a manger. Oh my goodness. That's the wrong story. Lay him in the tomb where no man has been laid before. So we're at what did I say? St. John 19? Yeah, St. John 19, verse 30. Here he is, another one. Matter of fact, let's read the 29. Because actually this is also in the Old Testament too. Now there was a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled it with a sponge. They filled the sponge with vinegar and put it in the hyssop and put it to his mouth. That's actually written in the Old Testament that they were going to do that. What person is thirsty and they gonna give him vinegar? Anybody say they're thirsty, I'm not gonna give you vinegar. I'm gonna give you water. But it was written, this was something to see that is Christ. Because the scripture said they were going to give that dude vinegar. Verse 30. When Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. Remember in Matthew 5, when he says, I come not to destroy the law, but to fulfill. This is when he fulfilled it. And he said right here, it is finished. Everything that was written about him in the Old Testament is done. It's fulfilled. And when he bowed his head, he gave up the ghost. He died, right? But we're going to get into verse 31, because this goes with Luke 23 that we just read about the man wanting to take his body. Therefore the Jews, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs may be broken and that they may be taken away. But see where it says this is not only the preparation day, but the Sabbath was drawing near, right? And it said for that Sabbath day was an high day. This is why people think that Christ died on Friday. That's not the case. The weekly Sabbath is not a high Sabbath unless the high Sabbath falls on the weekly Sabbath. Like what's coming up on the 20th of April this year. The high Sabbath will also be on, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, the high Sabbath will also be on the regular Sabbath. Let's go to Leviticus 23 and read about this high Sabbath. Let's go to Leviticus 23. And we're going to read about this high Sabbath because, again, if people are telling you to stay out of the Old Testament and you don't need that law no more, you will never figure this out. People have thought when it said, for that is the high Sabbath, they thought that was Saturday. And they knew the Sabbath started at night. These people knew when the Sabbath started, which was Friday night. So they assumed that he died Friday. But that's not the case. Because remember, we're going to get into them 3 days and 3 nights. And I've already showed you how they don't add up from Friday to Sunday. So Leviticus 23 verse 5. Let's find out about this high day. That Sabbath was a high day. In the 14th day of the first month, at even is the Lord's Passover. We just talked about this, right? At even is the Passover. What's the next day? On the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Unto the Lord 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. So if he died here and they wanted to take his body down before the high Sabbath came, that means the next, which would be here, starts that high Sabbath day. Right? But you won't notice if you don't read the Old Testament. So, this is Passover. That year, Tuesday night, Jesus ate, prayed, and was captured. That Wednesday morning, which is still the same Passover, Jesus tried and crucified. And then they buried him. Right before sundown, they buried him. Because remember, they were trying to get him off the cross and in the grave because the high Sabbath was drawing near. That means they had to hurry up, get to the crib, and clean themselves so they could be clean for the high Sabbath. So we see, this is when Jesus died. This is when he was buried, right before sundown. Let's go to Matthew 28. Let's go to Matthew 28. No. You know what? Before we do that, let's go back to Matthew 12. Yeah, let's go back to Matthew 12. So now that we know that Jesus died, we can't count when he died. We have to count what he said. Let's read what he said again. Matthew 12, verse 40 this time. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. He will be 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. So you can't count when he died as a day or even a half a day. He was put in the grave before sundown. So we got to start here. That's one night. That's one day. These two that represents a whole day, that's 2 nights. That's 2 days. That's a whole day. 3 nights, 3 days. That's a whole day. I hope somebody gets it. Let's run it back again. 1 night. Remember he said 3 days and 3 nights. 1 night, 1 day. 2 nights, 2 days. 3 nights, 3 days. And he couldn't go into the 4th day, which would be right here, because if he did, then Jesus would be a liar. And we know he's not a liar. So when did he rise? Right here. It was still the Sabbath. And when you literally look at it, he rose before the sundown, right? So when you literally look at it, he died here, rose here. That's even 72 hours too. You can't get around this. No matter how you try to slice it, it's still going to come up peanuts the same way. He rose on the 3rd day before midnight. Before sundown. So I'm even stuck on the midnight thing too. This is when Jesus rose. Okay? Now let's go to Matthew 28. Let's read the Gospels of what happened the day after. Matthew 28. We're going to start reading in verse 1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week. So, in the end of the Sabbath, when does the end of the Sabbath happen? Saturday, right before sundown. So this same Saturday, right here after sundown, would start the fourth day. Or in this case, the first day of the week. Okay? Hope people are getting the concept of what God is showing us. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. Let's skip down to verse 5. And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. He said, Come, see the place where the Lord lay. So the Lord ain't there. The Lord ain't there at all. He's already gone. The Lord didn't need the stone to be rolled away from him. Because remember, in the New Testament, we can read where the Lord came through walls. Especially when it came to Thomas. Is this thing falling? Yeah. Especially when it came to Thomas, he coming through walls. So he didn't need the stone rolled away. The stone was rolled away for Mary, for both of the Marys. It was meant for them to come in and see where the Lord was laying. Let's go to St. John 20. Let's see what time this was. St. John 20. The Lord laid it all out in this book, but it's just, are you going to search? Are you going to try to get some understanding? Or are you just going to believe what the world, or what the whore church has told you? Or are you going to read for yourself? St. John 20. Now let's peep this out. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark. It was still dark outside. Unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. So it was still dark outside. This wasn't early Sunday morning. But we can read where the light was coming. Let's go to Mark 16. Let's go to Mark 16 and read everything. You got to search these scriptures, man. You got to get some understanding from some teachers that got some understanding. And then pray to the Lord, the Holy Spirit, to help you understand what's going on too. Mark 16, we're going to start at verse 1. And when the Sabbath was past, so now we in here somewhere. Or here. 1, 2, 3. 3 days, 3 nights, like he said. But now, this is what we would call the fourth day, or the first day of the week. Let's read what happened. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, mother of James, and Salome had bought sweet spices, that they might come and anoint him. Now, they're coming to anoint the body. Let me show y'all something. Let's scroll back some. Jesus died here, right? He was buried here, right? We start counting one night, one day. If you remember, this is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so they couldn't go touch that body at all. They were having a feast. 2 nights, 2 days. This is the preparation for the regular Sabbath. So they don't have time to go deal with the body. Right? Now you got 3 days, the third night and the third day. They still can't, because it's the Sabbath again. That's why they were coming after the Sabbath passed. To now anoint the body. They had to wait 3. The Lord set this up so perfectly that nobody would touch his body for 3 days and 3 nights. Even the tomb he went into, no man ever laid there before. Now let's keep reading. I'm going to start at verse 1 again. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, mother of James, and Salome had brought sweet spices, that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning of the first day of the week. So now we over here now, y'all. We on the early morning. Up early in the morning. That's where we at now. So very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came on the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. See, people read this and they think, see, this is when Jesus rose at the rising of the sun. But let's see what was really going on here. And they said among themselves, who shall roll away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? And when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, which we know is an angel, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And he saith unto them, be not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. Do you know why he wasn't here at this early in the morning? Because he rose over here before the evening started a day before. He was gone already. They came and the angel told him he ain't here. He's risen. That's the understanding people need to get about this whole story of Jesus Christ being in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. But let's keep reading. But go your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you unto Galilee. There shall ye see him, as he said unto you. And they went out quickly and fled from the sepulchre, for they trembled and were amazed. Neither said they anything to any man, for that they were afraid. They didn't say nothing to nobody till they got back to the disciples. And all of that happened here. This is when, and then I didn't write it down, but this is when Jesus appeared to Mary. I need to put that in this lesson too. I forgot where it's at. But Jesus, even though here he rose before sundown, he didn't appear to anybody till Sunday in the morning or the daylight. And remember, he told Mary, don't touch me, for I have not ascended to my Father as of yet. That does not mean that he rose on Sunday. Because if he did, that would be the 4th day, and that means Jesus lied to all of us. And we know Jesus ain't no liar. Let's go down to verse 9. Because this is a problem that's in the book that needs to be dealt with too. And many of you already know about this because you've seen me do it before, and you heard other teachers, great teachers, show this problem too. There's a problem here with punctuation. The problem is when you read it a certain way, it makes it look like Jesus rose on the first day of the week. But of everything I've shown you, it totally contradicts this. Let's read. Now when Jesus was risen early in the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he cast 7 devils. I forgot I did have it in here. So he appeared first to Mary the first day of the week, right here. This is when Jesus appeared to Mary. But let's read this because there's a problem. It says, now when Jesus was risen early in the first day of the week, comma, that's the problem. Because Jesus didn't rise in the first day of the week. But that comma makes it look like he did. It makes it look like now when Jesus was risen early in the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene. But the comma should really be here. If I can get this thing to move. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get back to you. My fault. All right. It should, well, let me blow this up. Sorry about that, people. It should be here. This is where it should be at. Out of all of the scriptures and everything we just read, this should say, now when Jesus was risen, early in the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary Magdalene. Because that's what he did. He appeared to Mary right here the first day of the week. Again, now when Jesus was risen early in the first day of the week, it makes it sound like he rose the first day of the week, but it should be here. Now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene. But when they got there, what did the angel tell them? He's gone. He's already risen. Period. He ain't here. So 3 plus 3 can only mean 3. 3 days and 3 nights can only mean 3, right? So how do you get that from Friday evening? How do you get it from Friday to Sunday, period? You can't get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday to Sunday at all. But that's what the world has taught everybody and said, this is why Easter is on a Sunday. And they teach that Jesus has something to do with Easter, and he doesn't. Let's listen to the church confess what they've done.
I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who can prove to me from the Bible alone that I am bound to keep Sunday holy. There is no such law in the Bible. It is a law of the Holy Catholic Church alone. The Bible says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The Catholic Church says, no, by my divine power I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep holy the first day of the week. And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. T. Enright, CSSR, in a lecture at Hartford, Kansas, February 18th, 1884. The Catholic Church for over 1,000 years before the existence of a Protestant, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday.
What? Well, hold on. The church, men said, we're changing the Lord's Sabbath. Didn't we read earlier where the Lord said, this is my Sabbath? My rest? How are you going to change the Lord's rest? How are you going to change what thus saith the Lord?
The Catholic Mirror, September 23rd, 1893. Question, which is the Sabbath day? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day.
People be knowing what they doing. Now that they confessing this stuff, the whole world believes that it's Sunday. They're not going to even hear it now. They're going to be like, oh man, they Catholic. The priest is tripping. But some of these cats is like, listen, I know the truth now. I'm about to confess this because they trying to repent.
Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, AD 336, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Peter Geierman, The Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 2nd edition, 1910, page 50. Question, have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Answer, had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Stephen Keenan, A Doctrinal Catechism, page 174. There is but one church on the face of the earth which has the power or claims power to make laws binding on the conscience, binding before God, binding under penalty of hellfire. For instance, the institution of Sunday. What right has any other church to keep this day? You answer by virtue of the third commandment. The papacy changed the fourth commandment and called it the third.
Did you hear that? The papacy changed the fourth commandment and called it the third. They got rid of the Sabbath day law,
Which says, remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day. But Sunday is not the Sabbath. Any schoolboy knows that. Sunday is the first day of the week. I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who will prove by the Bible alone that Sunday is the day we are bound to keep. And no one has called for the money. It was the Holy Catholic Church that changed the day of rest from Saturday, the seventh day, to Sunday, the first day of the week. T. Enright, CSSR, in a lecture delivered in 1893.
Thank you, Bishop.
Let me give you a warning, all right? They're changing calendars now, people. There are calendars in Europe. They're starting in Europe first because this great awakening is happening. And people are starting to realize, oh, we've been lied to, and you can't stop what God said is going to happen. This gospel, from what Christ said, has to be taught to the world before the end comes. But what is Satan doing? He's changing calendars, people. There are calendars that now start the first day of the week on Monday. So now you're watching calendars get transformed from Monday to Sunday. Not Sunday to Saturday, Monday to Sunday. They're still trying to make sure that Sunday now becomes the seventh day of the week. Watch out for those things. Let's look at some more confessions by the church.
Constantine can rightfully claim the title of great, for he turned the history of the world into a new course and made Christianity, which until then had suffered bloody persecution, the religion of the state.
Now let me say this before we play this. Everybody all the way up until 325 AD knew that the Sabbath day was on what we call now Saturday, or the seventh day. It wasn't until this guy right here decided to change it. And he changed it because white folks and Israelites were keeping the Sabbath day. It wasn't just Israelites. Remember, Paul, Peter, and the rest of them cats, they went out and taught the Gentiles. And the Gentiles believed, and they started keeping the Sabbath day too. And it went against pagan tradition of keeping Sunday, the first day of the week. So what this dude did was absorb, and he brought everybody together to change the Sabbath day to Sunday. Let's look at some of the other stuff that happened in this might as well say the whore, the other church.
And so, as people from around the Roman Empire entered the Christian church, they brought with them many of their former pagan beliefs and practices. Over time, church leaders began to embrace the regal robes and flamboyant ceremony that was part of the pagan religions. And in place of the simple commands of God, they began to teach superstitions and man-made traditions. Now, instead of the Christian church converting the heathen world, the pagans were converting the church.
You're trying to Christianize an empire. You're trying to Christianize a pagan culture. The old basilicas were basically pagan temples. Put a cross over it. Put in paintings of biblical scenes, biblical heroes and saints and martyrs.
The speed with which the early church tobogganed into apostasy will take your breath away.
As millions of pagans hastily joined the church, They were naturally reluctant to dispose of their idol treasures. The Romans and the Greeks were so used to being surrounded by symbols of their deities. They began doing the same thing with Christianity. So many of these new converts just relabeled their idols with Christian names, like Paul, Mary, and Peter.
A statue of Jupiter became a statue of Peter.
And we know that because it has a sun disk right over its head that indicates that this is not Peter, but it's a pagan statue that's been renamed.
But what did they tell us that thing was above their head? A halo. That ain't a halo. It's a sun disk.
Instead of Romulus and Remus, hey, why not the martyrs, the great martyrs Cosmas and Damian, right?
The representations of Isis, which is originally an Egyptian goddess but has become very Greek already, becomes essentially the representation of Mary carrying her child.
You have a mother and child tradition all the way down through history. You have it in Mithraism, you have it in Babylon, you have it all the way back in Persia.
It appears that Mary acquired some of the characteristics that were associated with some of these other goddesses.
She wears a dark blue coat and she stands on the half moon. She is the mother of all gods. Isis carrying her son Horus. That is the image that gets a new name, and now the name is Mary carrying the child Jesus.
Or a depiction of the...
Now, if you have followed me or either watch, I got a couple of videos called All Roads Lead Back to Babylon. All of that points back to Semiramis. All of the gods any gods you ever hear of, it's either pointing back to Semiramis or Nimrod. Nimrod originally was Baal. Semiramis was originally Astaroth. And everywhere that the people spread, they gave her new names. These are the Greek names. You just saw where they got Isis and turned it into something else. And then when they brought in paganism to Christianity, they took the story of Mary and Jesus and put it right on in there with Isis and Horus. Let's keep going.
God Hermes is shown as Christ the Good Shepherd.
Asclepius is the iconographic model for a lot of the depictions of Jesus, yes. A young, vibrant god with curly hair, down to about here, and a little beard.
Soon the statues of the saints and even Jesus began adorning the churches. Even though God clearly forbids this practice in the Ten Commandments, people continue to revere and to pray to these relabeled idols.
Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them.
Related to the last point is the veneration of Mary, the mother of Jesus. While it is true, Mary was a faithful woman and greatly honored to be his mother, the scriptures teach nowhere that she's to be deified or worshipped.
The Bible does not venerate Mary as a special saint. It lifts her up as a pure, wonderful woman used by God to give birth to the Messiah.
Yet, at the Council of Nicaea in 325, the church elevated Mary to the stature of a goddess and co-mediator with Christ. Even as early as the late 4th century, churches were being dedicated to the Virgin Mary. But sadly, these were not the only errors that slipped in during this time. The baptism ceremony was also performed in a lake or a river where a person could be fully submerged, signifying they were fully washed from their sins. The practice of baptism was gradually altered by the church. Hundreds of years after Christ, sprinkling and pouring was introduced as a more convenient mode of baptism. This actually undermined the powerful symbolism of the service, and it contradicts the example of Jesus, who was baptized by immersion. Another Christian truth that was altered by pagan influence was the Lord's Supper. Jesus instituted the communion service, also known by some as the Eucharist.
Now remember, in this lesson, we showed that he did not institute communion. He kept the Passover. Let's keep going.
To be a beautiful yet simple ceremony where his followers would drink unfermented wine and eat unleavened bread. These symbols of Jesus' sinless body and blood are designed to help believers remember the sacrifice and the teachings of Christ. But again, under the influence of heathen rituals, the Holy Communion service was gradually changed by church leaders into a mystical ceremony. In this new ritual, fermented wine was used, and the priest, allegedly, had the power to transform the bread and the wine into the actual body and blood of Christ.
Even to the point where later on they say we are creating God by speaking the words of mystagogy.
By 1415 AD, at the Council of Constance, church leaders further decreed that only the priests could drink the wine and the laity would only receive the bread. Yet the Bible clearly says that when Jesus established the communion service, they all drank from it. About 300 years after Christ, the church began to deviate from another of the 10 commandments, specifically the 4th commandment that requires believers to remember the 7th day as the Sabbath.
Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God.
Church leaders began to devalue the 7th day Sabbath of the 10 commandments in preference for the more popular Roman Sunday.
Some Christians mistakenly thought that you should fast on the Sabbath, but you could feast on Sunday. That's what the pagans did. They feasted on Sunday, fasted on Saturday. Not a Jewish concept. The Jews fasted Friday and feasted Sabbath.
And Christ is resurrected on a Sunday, and there's a very natural tendency, therefore, to mark that and celebrate.
Now, we just got finished going over that Christ did not rise on a Sunday. He rose Saturday before the sun went down, and he appeared to Mary Magdalene first on Sunday. He didn't rise on Sunday. He appeared on Sunday.
There's a third reason, and that is the influence of sun worship that creeps into the church. And when sun worship begins to creep into the church, Constantine can make use of that to lead to the exaltation of Sunday, the day of the sun, as being the day that people should worship on.
This gradual departure from God's law over the centuries has become so widely accepted that most are shocked to learn that Sunday keeping has no foundation in the Bible. In AD,
and the reason why the world has this man, Israel, priest of God, it's our own fault. Stop getting mad at white folks. Stop getting mad at other people trying to be the priest. Because if we would have kept the commandments of God from the very beginning, none of this would be happening. The nations would be trying to follow us like they did in the days of King Solomon. But we were taken out the way, and they decided we gonna do these things. And that's why all of this is going on today.
313, Constantine published the Edict of Milan, establishing Sunday as a day of rest. The emperor's Sunday law had nothing to do with Christianity. It was actually to honor the main Greco-Roman sun god called Helios, or Apollo.
The Emperor Constantine became a convert to Christianity, and also because he remained partial to the sun god, the Emperor Constantine moved the day of worship from Saturday, the Sabbath, as had been traditional in Judaism, obviously, to Sunday, the day of the sun god. And ever since, Christian folks, at least for the most part, overwhelmingly, have held their day of worship on Sunday rather than Saturday.
Centuries earlier, the prophet Daniel had foretold a religious power would arise that would think to change times and laws. Within the 10 Commandments, there's only one law that is also a time: the Sabbath. The doctrine of hellfire was also distorted by pagan.
So we're going to move on because I don't want to make this too long. But let's get into, now that we see what Sunday doctrine and worship of that doctrine is all about, has nothing to do with Christ. But everyone says this is when Christ rose from the grave, and this is the day called Easter. It has nothing to do with Christ. It has something to do with this woman right here, this goddess Ishtar, or pronounced Easter. Before I read what this is saying, I have a book here called The Last 2 Million Years. And on page 216, it says, pagan rites absorbed. By a stroke of tactical genius, the church, while intolerant of pagan beliefs, was able to harness the power of emotions generated by pagan worship. Often churches were cited where temples had stood before. So wherever there was a sun worshiping temple, they made a church there instead of tearing it down and rebuilding a new church. Oftentimes churches were cited where temples had stood before, and many heathen festivals were added to the Christian calendar. Easter, for instance, a time of sacrifice and rebirth in the Christian year, which is false, takes its name after the Norse goddess Eostre, in whose honor rites were held every spring. She in turn was simply a northern version of the Phoenician earth mother Astarte, goddess of fertility. All of this runs back to Semiramis and Ishtar, right here, what you're looking at. Easter eggs continue an old age tradition in which the egg is a symbol of birth, and cakes which were eaten to mark the festivals of Astarte and Ostre were the direct ancestors of our hot cross buns. That's out of the book of The Last 2 Million Years, page 216. Now let's read what we got up on the screen. Easter was originally the celebration of Ishtar, the Assyrian and Babylonian goddess of fertility and sex. Her symbols, like the egg and the bunny, were and still are fertility and sex symbols. Yes, they are. Because they say you do what like rabbits? What does the egg symbolize? Ovaries. Or did you actually think the eggs and bunnies had anything to do with the resurrection? What does bunnies and eggs have to do with Christ? Not a thing, because it has something to do with Ishtar. After Constantine decided to Christianize the empire, Easter was changed to represent Jesus. But at its roots, Easter, which is how you pronounce Ishtar, is all about celebrating fertility and sex. That's what it comes down to. And how do you keep this tradition going? This is how you keep the tradition going. You go after the kids. You get the adults into it so much that you go, and then they get the kids into it. And when those kids grow up, they get their kids into it. And as long as it keeps going, the lie becomes the truth. And the best way to get kids is with little pretty things like this.
Easter sight words. Basket. Candy. Chick. Church. Eggs. Flower. Grass. Jesus. Lamb. Rabbit. Let's do it again.
Now let's pay attention to what all of this is telling the children. If you got your eyes open, you're going to notice everything has to do with spring and has nothing really to do with Jesus, but they slide Jesus in the church in there with it. Let's watch it.
Basket.
So we know that basket is to hold all these eggs, right? What holds an egg on a woman? Well, you either got the ovaries, or you could just go on and say the uterus. But let's keep going.
Candy.
That right there is what's going to get the kids, period. All the rest of this other stuff, they're probably like, yeah, whatever. Candy, 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 Easter candy. Same thing with Christmas. Same thing with Halloween. Let's keep going.
Chick.
Chicks come from eggs.
Church.
What does church have to do with Easter? Not a thing. But they slid it in there with it, right? Let's keep going.
Eggs.
Oh, there's the precious eggs. There go the eggs now. What do eggs have to do with Jesus?
Flower.
Now, these are the things that happens in the springtime, right? They're pointing towards Semiramis. They're pointing towards Ishtar. Easter.
Grass.
First thing that starts growing, the grass, trees and all that, flowers.
Jesus.
Has nothing to do with Easter. Nothing at all. He's slidden in there.
Lamb.
If you know about the lamb, which we read a little bit earlier, that has something to do with Passover.
Rabbit.
And we all know what rabbits do. Now let's watch something that's amazing. Now that I'm grown and watching this. And I'm glad I never made my kids do it, because I really didn't care about it when I was a child. I didn't care about Christmas that much either. But let's watch what goes on, which is a tradition during Easter for children.
Dynamo Stadium, and we just went Easter hunting. It was awesome.
Yeah, we did Easter egg hunting. Yeah, and I found more eggs than her. You know that it doesn't matter who found the most eggs.
I caught like 32, like 50 eggs already, and this is really exciting because I haven't been. This is my first time for an Easter egg, and for my first time I caught all these eggs.
Yeah, I got these 3 rings.
I got a tattoo.
And a bracelet.
Frogs, silly snakes and whatever, and that's it.
I had a lot of fun here. This place the best. But I have more fun. It's fun.
Yes, what's fun?
This whole thing with Easter egg hunting, it's, of course, everything is to get the children into what we should not be doing. If you can get the kids into it and it's wrong and they like it, it'll stay wrong. But what people don't understand, everything has a meaning. When it comes to eggs, we know that eggs are representing ovary eggs in a woman, right? So when you hide these eggs and you send you send the children after the eggs, what are the children now representing? They're representing sperm. And I know some of y'all are probably like, nah. Yeah. Because that's what sperm does. Remember, everything about Easter is about fertility and sex. So if you're sending your children out on Easter egg hunts, they're representing sperm trying to find the eggs. And everybody's happy. It's the same thing when it comes to Christmas. A whole bunch of things people don't want to look at is, hey, it is what it is. And it all comes down to this person right here. 3 days and 3 nights does not equal Easter. Semiramis and Ishtar, or the same person, that equals Easter. Let's go to Jeremiah. No, let's go to Revelation 13. Revelation 13, because all of this was done by the power of someone. Let's read Revelation 13. This whole thing with Ishtar, the changing of God's days and all that stuff, this was done. And it was, and we can read this in Revelation 13, verse 1 and 2. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw the beast rise up out of the sea. The beast is actually people rising up out of the sea. This is not out of the water. The sea is the people, but the beast is the organization rising up from the people, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the names of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. That's the Greek Empire. And his feet was like unto the of a bear, Medo-Persian Empire. And his mouth was like a lion. That's the Babylonian Empire. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Who did the church say they got authority to do what? Come up out of her, people. We saw that priest sit up and say the church said it had authority to change God's Sabbath day. But who gave that church that authority? And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Let's go to Jeremiah 16. Let's go to Jeremiah 16, because all of this stuff in the long run, people are going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. Let's go to Jeremiah 16. And I was going to read all of it, but we just going to read one verse. Verse 19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity and things wherein there is no profit. Gentiles going to figure this out too. It's going to take them time probably. It's probably going to take Israel even longer, to be honest, because we are so hard-headed. Everyone loves to keep the tradition of what they've been taught, and don't realize that that tradition that they've been taught is going to lead them to the lake of fire. You don't want to go there. You truly do not want to go there. So I would advise you, to relook at this video. Relook at what you've been taught. Read your Bible. Do research. And I advise everybody to do research on every holiday. Not just Easter and Christmas. Research every holiday. Because there's something in everything. So I thank everybody for watching. Please share the video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can look me under, you can type up on YouTube Asa K Fingers, or you could do hashtag The Wake Up Show. That's THEE, Wake Up Show, not THE. And you could also look under YouTube as Attainment. One of them three, you're going to find my channel, because I need subscribers on there so I go live again on there. Hopefully I can download this video and upload it on there. So I thank you guys for watching. Yeah, share the video. Show your loved ones. You got a whole week. You got a whole week to show people, hey, let me show you visually with this lesson right here what 3 days and 3 nights is, when God's days start, when they end, what Passover was about, why Jesus came and did what he did, why he died. Well, not really why he died. We all know why he died, but when he died and when he rose. It's all there in the scriptures. It's easy to figure it out, especially if you're the Lord's sheep. Now look, let me just give you some advice. If they don't get it right away, you did your job. Maybe it'll sink in their head years from now or before Christ comes. So, again, thank you for watching. Please share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'm thinking about changing the Monday nights. I'm not sure yet, but Saturday mornings I'll be like exhausted sometimes from working all week, so I might. But I'll let you know. So, thank y'all for watching. Grace and peace in the name of Jesus.
Time to wake up.
Wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Up you wake, up you wake, up you wake, up you wake.